having to use your own money or any of your own time. And if you'd like, I'll hop on a free phone call with you and give you the exact done for you template, fully customized for you personally, that I've also given to all these people scrolling across the screen. And that's literally all there is to this ad. Unless you don't like a passive income done for you business without having to use your own money or your own time, then I don't know what to tell you. All you need to do is click the top right corner if you're on mobile and the bottom left if you're on your computer. You'll get a quick video explaining everything that you will get on the phone call with me. And then on this call, I'll just give you everything you need to start the same day and get results without using any of your own time again or any of your own money. I'll literally share everything with you and make it personalized for you to make it profitable and passive for you. I'll show you how you don't have to use any of your own money.
Breaking tonight, CNN is suspending anchor Chris Cuomo. This comes amid revelations about his involvement in the defense of his brother, then New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, against sexual misconduct allegations. Fox News media analyst and host of Fox's Media Buzz, Howie Kurtz, has the latest tonight, breaking just this hour. Good evening, Howie.
Yeah, Brett, good evening. That news coming just moments ago. CNN suspending its primetime host, its top-rated host, a statement saying that newly released documents point to a greater level of involvement in his brother's efforts than we previously knew. As a result, we have suspended Chris indefinitely, pending further evaluation. And this is a reference to documents that have come out about his efforts to orchestrate the defense of his brother, the then Governor Andrew Cuomo. And the CNN host didn't address it at all last night on his show, and he spoke only of why his brother resigned on his Sirius XM program today. But the criticism had been mounting after disclosures that Chris Cuomo used his media connections to help the then governor fight sexual harassment allegations. The liberal Atlantic magazine, this of course is before the suspension, says Chris Cuomo's position is now untenable. He should resign. If he doesn't, CNN should sack him. Rolling Stone's editor says these shocking ethical breaches would be fireable offenses anywhere else. In some texts released by investigators, Cuomo appears to be gathering information on his brother's accusers. I have a lead on the wedding girl, Cuomo wrote, referring to Anna Ruck, who'd said 3 days earlier the governor harassed her at a wedding reception. As for another of Governor Cuomo's accusers, Charlotte Bennett, an advisor to the governor testified that Chris Cuomo forwarded a purported set of documents from her time in college. Cuomo denied doing Oppo research, saying his calls to reporters to gather information were business as usual. He told top aide Melissa DeRosa that his brother's statement about Charlotte Bennett was poor, and he should have directly apologized to her and all New Yorkers. Bennett tweeted today that Cuomo had tried to smear her through representable and inexcusable behavior and called for his firing. Now, Andrew Cuomo, in his video testimony, said it would be insane for him to grope anyone, and he sparred with investigators.
Do you understand what a girlfriend is?
Oh, girlfriend means different things to different people.
Even after the suspension, CNN chief Jeff Zucker faces a tough decision because Chris Cuomo is his top-rated host. The problem for the network is appearing to condone conduct that would generally be deemed unacceptable, now that new evidence has contradicted some of Cuomo's past denials. Brett.
Howie, there's multiple reporting now that CNN is saying that it indefinitely suspends Chris Cuomo, and that's a different setup.
Right. It's not saying a week or two. That's sending a pretty strong message. Remember, there'd been no penalty, even though some of this came out months ago, against Chris Cuomo. And now I think there's a signal here that it's possible, I don't want to speculate, but it's possible his time with the network could be limited based on this indefinite suspension.
Okay. Howie, with the breaking news. Thank you.
CRM. It stands for Customer Relationship Management, and it could revolutionize the way you run your business.
So, you want to get hired before summer ends? The hottest tech companies are desperate to hire for customer success and tech sales positions. We'll get you job ready in just 4 weeks. You'll make $75,000 or more per year. You won't pay a dime for training until you start making money. Let's get you in. This is SV Academy. Apply before it's too late.
CNN's credibility crisis just got a whole lot worse. The liberal network allowing Chris Cuomo on the air last night, despite newly released bombshell text messages showing Chris trying to dig up dirt on the women accusing his brother Andrew Cuomo of sexual harassment. The anchor texting a top aide to the brother about one of the accusers, saying, "I have a lead with this wedding girl." In another text with the same aide, she writes, "Rumor going around from Politico, 1 to 2 more people coming out tomorrow. Can you check your sources?" Cuomo responded on it. No one has heard that yet. The messages contradict what Cuomo told viewers back in August.
I'm not an advisor. I'm a brother. I wasn't in control of anything. I was there to listen and offer my take. And my advice to my brother was simple and consistent. Own what you did.
The Liberal Network says it is reviewing the documents and seeking additional clarity on what Chris did, like they need any more time, Greg. And meanwhile, Chris says he calls the criticism not legitimate and blames media noise.
All right, I'm going to defend Chris Cuomo, but I'm saying this knowing that if a Fox anchor had been doing this, CNN would demand that scalp until he looked like Brian Stelter. You notice that Stelter is not defending him because Stelter thinks he's going to get the 9 o'clock fat chance, literally. My theory is as long as Joy Reid is employed, no one should ever be fired. Cuomo is a pompous, self-involved ass. That's why we love him. You get rid of him, I lose at least 3 to 5 segments a week of fun on my show. I am so pro Cuomo, I'm going out there to protest for him. I want him to keep his job. But watching MSNBC talk about him being fired, that's rich. That's too much. Because Cuomo isn't a racist. Reid is a bona fide, out-of-the-closet bigot who repeatedly uses the word white as a derogatory adjective, which he talks about white tears or white people. It's as though they are inferior. This is 2021, and there's a major network, MSNBC is kind of a major network, where they employ a racist in prime time who literally is derogatory towards an entire race. And she says the words out loud. Cuomo is nothing like that. So until she's gone, I'm on Team Cuomo.
Okay.
That's good.
That's a take.
Has she ever responded?
Noted.
She's a racist. Why would she respond?
Terrible.
She hates white people.
Yeah. All right. So Dana, one of the more insidious revelations I thought that I touched on in the intro is the fact that we now know Chris was leaning on his sources to potentially contribute to witness or accuser intimidation. I mean, this is a really big deal. This is insidious.
So there is lots of things here. One is what he told the audience, right? So you saw that in the clip. It's like, I'm just being a brother. Now, if he had said that from the beginning, or even said, I'm going to take a leave of absence, I'm going to try to, I'm going to help my brother, I shouldn't be reporting on this, etc. Fine, that would have been one thing, but he didn't do that. And it's not just MSNBC calling for him to be fired. It's one of the accusers for Andrew Cuomo is saying that he should be fired. Like, to me, that's a little bit more credible, right? And then the Me Too movement is well and truly dead if they don't do something about this. And also, how much does he disrespect the bosses at CNN? And one last thing, what we have are emails and text messages because the Attorney General is doing this. What you don't have is what was said on any phone call. Because that, everybody knows the phone call is where you figure out exactly what you're going to say. You give the advice. I mean, we know that he joined conference calls because of all of that. So I think it's just an incredibly terrible judgment on his part.
He did try unsuccessfully to get rid of even that text evidence by saying delete this thread to her. And Jesse, to Dana's point about the higher ups at CNN, his former executive producer published an op-ed detailing a physical sexual harassment encounter, which he didn't deny. In fact, he apologized for it in writing. And let me point out, it was the exact same scenario that his brother is being criminally prosecuted for. It's forcible touching on the buttocks. Under his watch, under his policy that Governor Cuomo instated. The irony of this is not lost on anyone, and he sits there night after night on air.
So he's already on thin ice. So if you're Zucker, you have to act like you're going through the motions and pondering the future of Chris Cuomo to look like you're a legitimate news organization. They're a disinformation outlet for the DNC. That's what they really are. So they're pretending, and you got to look at the resume. The guy's the highest rated guy on CNN. You just re-sign him to a deal. He's still getting slaughtered at 9 o'clock by Hannity and by Maddow. So do you have to cut him loose? Is he damaged goods? Is he worth all the trouble that you're getting right now? Or could you kind of weather the storm and instead maybe just suspend him for 2 weeks, take stock afterwards, and then give the guy another shot and hope no one really notices? Is he going to be contrite if you suspend him? It doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would be contrite, so I don't know. But Zucker's in a jam because you're looking at the ratings, CNN. I mean, they got 3 more years of Biden's poison. They're in deep, deep trouble. And so who do you replace? Cuomo with at 9, have you groomed anybody? I mean, do you have a strategy? Doesn't seem like they have a big strategy here.
As long as that person doesn't sexually harass or contribute to witness intimidation, you would think it would be a safe choice. Geraldo, the liberal media is calling for him to be fired as well. Rolling Stone, leading the charge, published an article with a headline that said, Chris Cuomo getting caught for doing something that any other journalist would be fired for. NPR on board, The Independent. The list goes on. He has no one in his corner, it seems, except for Zucker.
Well, I don't believe any of those liberal organizations. I think they're all hysterical time to time. A couple of things. You know, Chris Cuomo is my protege. I helped him learn the business. He was my host on my talk show as I was trying to transition out to being in the media. He is a friend, so I give you that first. Secondly, as far as I know, there was no allegation, at least from August on, that he used his program in any way to help his brother. So that's the difference between what he does behind the scenes as a private citizen and what he's doing as an anchor using CNN to manipulate what's going on. I think that would have been much, much worse. And thirdly, I hear no one mentioning anymore Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York State, is the most hysterically left-wing public official. She is rabid in her ambition to be governor. She announced her candidacy for governor even as she was trying to get rid of Governor Andrew Cuomo. It is fraught with politics. This whole thing is filthy, and I think that Zucker is right to keep his powder dry. Let's see if indeed Chris used his position to steer CNN. That is the standard.
But you know what? So that when you put it that way, it's kind of enjoyable because it's not like Cuomo is a conservative. That he's been no friend to an independent thinker. He's a lockstep leftist. To watching them devour themselves is actually enjoyable. So if it's Letitia James going after he's not much less. He's as liberal as she is. If you listen to his editorials.
I think Rabbit is hyperbolic. I think she's just declared her interest, her candidacy, and remember who signs the paychecks. There you go. And the New York taxpayers, thanks to Open the Books, we now know paid almost $5 million in legal fees for the elder brother Cuomo. So you're this. All right.
Wait, the fact that she drops this the same time she announces her candidacy, that's not relevant, the timing?
You called it rabid. I don't think it's rabid. I think, whatever. All right,
it's not Letitia James' fault that Andrew Cuomo was an ass.
Watch your mouth, young lady.
Sorry.
I yield to that.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
I'm not an advisor. I'm a brother. I wasn't in control of anything. I was there to listen and offer my take. And my advice to my brother was simple and consistent. Own what you did.
Is what he told the audience, right? So you saw that in the clip. It's like, I'm just being a brother. Now, if he had said that from the beginning, or even said, I'm going to take a leave of absence, I'm going to try to, I'm going to help my brother, I shouldn't be reporting on this, etc. Fine, that would have been one thing, but he didn't do that. And it's not just MSNBC calling for him to be fired. It's one of the accusers for Andrew Cuomo is saying that he should be fired. Like, to me, that's a little bit more credible, right? And then the Me Too movement is well and truly dead if they don't do something about this. And also, how much does he disrespect the bosses at CNN? And one last thing, what we have are emails and text messages because the Attorney General is doing this. What you don't have is what was said on any phone call. Because that, everybody knows the phone call is where you figure out exactly what you're going to say, you give the advice. I mean, we know that he joined conference calls because of all of that. So I think it's just an incredibly terrible judgment on his part.
Download the Domino's app today and become a Piece of the Pie Rewards member to earn points toward free pizza.
Good evening and welcome to a special edition of Tucker Carlson Tonight. Now, it's hard to have a lot of faith in political polling, obviously, especially after the last couple of presidential elections. The polls weren't just wrong in those elections, they were insane. They told us things like, oh no, Hillary could take Texas and Joe Biden's a lock to win Florida. In the end, those predictions had no relationship to observable reality. But that doesn't mean that all polling is worthless. Actually, as a relative measure over time, polls can provide a lot of historical context. So Joe Biden's polls are in the toilet right now. Everyone knows that. And the question is why? You'll hear a lot of people say, well, it was Afghanistan, the true debacle that Biden oversaw in Afghanistan. The question is that really it, however? Is a foreign policy disaster enough to knock a president off his game in his first year in office? Well, here's some comparisons. Gerald Ford's approval ratings after the fall of Saigon. Those would be worth looking at. The fall of Saigon was the most humiliating moment in this country's history up until that time. The entire world watched as Americans ran from a peasant army. Civilians dangled from helicopters, taking off from the roof of the catastrophe, one that became an enduring symbol of the incompetence of our foreign policy establishment. The U.S. had spent more than a decade in Vietnam, lost close to 60,000 men, and after all of that, we ran away. And yet, in the days after the fall of Saigon, Gerald Ford's poll numbers, as measured by Gallup, actually went up. His approval rating increased from 39 to 40%. Then just a month later, by the end of May 1975, Ford's approval rating surged to 51%. So Gerald Ford, President Ford, oversaw an international embarrassment, but Americans gave him a pass. They weren't done with him just yet. Something very similar happened during the John F. Kennedy administration. Kennedy was in charge during the Bay of Pigs invasion in April of 1961, which he single-handedly turned into a disaster. That disaster made Fidel Castro a national hero in Cuba and drove Cuba even closer to the Soviet Union. All of this happened just before the Cuban Missile Crisis. So that was not a good thing for anybody. And yet, despite that, JFK's approval ratings did not drop. In fact, they went up from 78% to 83% in the days after the disaster. So the Bay of Pigs happened in the first year of the Kennedy administration. The fall of Saigon happened in the first year of the Ford administration. So it's hard not to conclude that when presidents are just starting out, Americans give them a pass, even on the big things, especially in foreign policy. So with that in mind, it's worth taking a look at how Joe Biden's approval numbers have changed during his first year in office. And of course, it's an unequivocal disaster. According to a new Quinnipiac poll, only 36% of Americans approve of the job Joe Biden is doing in office. The Real Clear Politics polling average has Joe Biden doing only marginally better at about 41%. Gallup has Biden at 42%, down 15 points from just a couple of months ago. You should know that Kamala Harris's approval number is 28%, which is right around Jeffrey Dahmer levels. So 2/3 of Americans do not want Joe Biden to run for president again, and that includes most Democrats. Just 10 months into Biden's presidency, Americans want him gone. So as a historical matter, that's unheard of. How bad is it? It's gotten so bad that college students, typically not a right-wing demographic, are mocking Biden at football games. So Biden is deeply unpopular. The question is why? How did we get here? That matters, and that's going to be our focus over the next hour on this show. What we're witnessing under the Biden administration is something Americans will absolutely not forgive: the decline in our standard of living. Biden hasn't simply embarrassed the United States internationally, though he's certainly done that. Americans can overlook that, as they did under Ford and JFK, and hope for something better next time. Biden has made living in this country much more difficult for millions of people. He's made it a lot harder for Americans to afford basic amenities, things like building supplies and gasoline. And then he showed almost no interest in fixing this. In fact, it's clear it's being done on purpose because global warming. One local news station in Florida has talked to restaurant owners about the effect of rising food prices, for example. Watch this.
From chicken wings.
It's $140 a case versus what was $40.
To plastic gloves.
They've gone from $20 a case to $140 plus. And again, sometimes it's hard to get those.
Nearly everything costs more. John Horn on FRLA's executive committee also owns Anna Maria oyster bars. Supply issues are keeping favorites like Alaskan king crab legs and clam strips off the menu.
One of our most popular items. Can't get them from anyone.
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, major commodities in the wholesale food price index are way up since last year. Beef rose 57.7%, fat and oils nearly 50%, eggs almost 40%, and processed poultry 30%. To offset that, menu prices on average are up 4.7%.
What is this exactly? We can't get enough food? A lot of things are happening here. One of them is inflation. And inflation is not an act of God, it's the result of government policy. The Federal Reserve has devalued the US dollar by printing too many US dollars. Why are they printing them? To pay for more government spending that under the Biden administration is now literally out of control. There was a $10.1 trillion amount of spending obligations in fiscal year 2020. $10.1 trillion. 2019, which wasn't ancient history, it was the other day, the total was 6.6 trillion. Still a lot, but very different than 10.1. Now the spending is of course on the way. More spending is on the way because we can spend any amount of money. We hold the world's reserve currency. Biden's so-called Build Back Better bill is estimated to cost another $5 trillion. So the people who are printing this money, the US Congress, the Fed specifically, know that they are making the problem worse, but they don't care. In fact, they're mocking you for noticing that your standard of living has declined. The St. Louis Fed is to release this statement. It's hard to miss the contempt here. This is real. Quote, a Thanksgiving dinner serving of poultry costs $1.42. A soybean-based dinner serving with the same amount of calories costs 66 cents and provides almost twice as much protein. End quote. Of course, being soy-based also lowers your testosterone level, which of course is the entire point of this. But it's just interesting that the Fed, which is supposed to be focused on keeping inflation under control, that's why we have a Fed, is now telling you what to eat. How did this happen? How long until they're telling you to eat bugs to stop climate change? Not far from that at all. In the Biden administration, a host of bureaucratic agencies are suddenly in charge of your body, the minute details of your body. What you have for Thanksgiving dinner. The White House believes that OSHA, for example, can tell you what to inject into your body. Get the injection or you're fired. Now, you remember that just a few months ago, the White House was saying the opposite of this. Vaccine mandates are illegal.
I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory, but I would do everything in my power. Just like I don't think masks have to be made mandatory nationwide.
Can we mandate vaccines across the country? No, that's not a role that the federal government, I think, even has the power to make.
We cannot require someone to be vaccinated. That's just not what we can do. It is a matter of privacy to know who is or who isn't.
No, definitely not. You don't want to mandate and try and force anyone to take a vaccine. We've never done that. We don't want to be mandating from the federal government to the general population. It would be unenforceable and not appropriate.
People are reckless and crazy and dishonest, and the rest of us put up with it. After all that, after everything you just saw, of course, they mandated the injections. They knew that was illegal. Just as we saw with the eviction ban, they did it anyway. Then the airlines started canceling flights. The healthcare workers disappeared because somehow politicians know more about corona than nurses? How does that work? They did it anyway. They ran out of truck drivers to pick up goods from airports. First responders were fired. You couldn't get an ambulance. And Joe Biden stands up at a town hall and says they had it coming. Yeah, the little people are getting uppity. We're going to hurt them. And he definitely hurt them. So this is brazen. Most people are very tired of it. It's not a partisan question. Do you want to live in a functional country or don't you? The question is, how are we going to survive 3 more years of this? It's a very good question.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Foreign interference has been an evolving threat for some years now.
It's been about power for the Chinese party state.
China's rise was inevitable.
They wanted to be able to covertly influence our public debate.
This was a get down on your knees and kiss my boots job.
Is this the worst it's been?
It is difficult at the moment.
What do you mean by that?
They're schoolyard bullies. They could hurt us very badly. It crushed the Hong Kong democracy.
The dynamic has changed.
Their survival is the only thing that really matters to them.
Your family are inside the camps. Do you think they're all alive?
It's a genocide.
Australia is in the midst of a diplomatic freeze with China. According to Beijing, the laundry list of grievances and accusations is a long one. We've gone from cooperation to competition. And as the rise of China marches on, so do the threats facing Australia, the Asia Pacific, and the rest of the world.
Madam Speaker, the President of the People's Republic of China.
When President Xi visited Canberra,
Hello?
Hello, Anthony?
Yeah.
This is your medication delivery driver. Are you home?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be there in about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Thank you.
deals were done. and friendships were made.
It was actually what I would consider the golden period of the Australia-China relationship. We were signing the free trade agreement. We were escalating our relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. Really, it felt very golden at the time.
It is said that when friends meet, 1,000 cups of wine cannot contain their happiness. This and it's part of a historic day. After 10 long years of negotiation, we have finalised our free trade agreement as a sign of the comprehensive strategic partnership between our two countries.
This historic visit led to a new level of diplomacy between Australia and China. But there was something else going on.
There was something else going on. You could see it to some extent already.
It didn't take long for the trust to dry up and the relationship to unravel.
As far as President Xi is concerned, the era of hiding your strength and biding your time is over.
It's the 100th year of the Communist Party. Never before have so many people risen so far, so fast.
China is quite simply determined to quickly resume what it sees as its rightful position as the world's #1 nation.
Supreme Leader Xi Jinping is on a mission to make China the world's greatest superpower.
The challenge for us in the West is to accept that the rise of China is legitimate. We can't stop it anyway. It is going to be the world's biggest economy. The rise of China is good for China and good for the world. China's rise was inevitable, just inevitable.
But it comes at a cost.
Just look at the actions, look at the words. It's pretty obvious that he thinks that China's time has come.
Hello?
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 And for the rest of us, it's a case of tremble and obey.
In 2012, the Communist Party of China installed an old-school communist as new leader, the ambitious Xi Jinping.
Do you think he revels in being feared?
Is it better to be loved or feared as a leader? And Xi Jinping has definitely gone for the feared option, and he's utterly ruthless in that.
The world's second largest economy was powering. It had increased, on average, 10% a year for 30 years. With 800 million workers, China quickly became home to the largest companies in the world and the most billionaires. For the Chinese people, life had never been so good.
I think we have to look at China's rise and Australia's
Are you serious?
participation in that rise in a very positive way. Hundreds of millions of people have been lifted out of poverty, many of them in China herself.
But for the new supreme leader, China was on the wrong path. The ruling Communist Party had to be hardened up, and the Chinese people had to be reminded the CCP was in power.
Our coal, our gas, our iron ore has helped to bring about 500 million Chinese from the third world to the middle class in scarcely a generation, which has been a massive advance in human well-being, and let's be glad of that. But for China, I don't think this has ever really been about prosperity for the Chinese people. It's been about power for the Chinese party state.
In my judgment, he's the most malign, most aggressive, and most ambitious leader since Mao Zedong. He's seeking domination not just inside his country, but he's seeking domination outside of his country.
One of the first things Xi did as president was to highlight to the Chinese people the danger posed by the West and its Western values. Things like democracy, individual rights, and an independent media. He also highlighted the danger in questioning their own Chinese style of socialism. While outside China, the focus shifted to expansion, control,